Hey guys, welcome to another video here on the AviationPro channel. In this video I'm going to show you how to start up the PMDG 747-400 version 3 or Queen of the Skies 2 from cold and dark. Now I'm also going to include an FMC tutorial that will help you out to set up a basic flight, a classic flight from Amsterdam to New York JFK. So stay tuned for that. We're going to discuss both the cold and dark startup procedure and the FMC as we move along. So I think it's about time to start up this airplane for its beautiful flight, and so let's head into the cockpit and start them up. Now before we start up, I will quickly show you how to get in the cold and dark state. You simply open the FMC in the PMDG 747 version 3, go to load the panel state, and there you can select the cold and dark state, which is there by default. Hit execute. It's going to take a couple of seconds to load that state, and then you'll end up with a cold and dark state that I will work from in this video. So welcome into the cockpit of the Boeing 747-400 of KLM. We're gonna start them up. Now as you can see, it's completely cold and dark right here. So we'll first get some electrical power on the airplane, and for that we'll turn on the battery switch. And as you can hear, some systems are already starting to run. We can close the gap and we can move the standby power to auto. Now what this is going to do is start up some of the main systems of the airplane. We'll shortly see the displays, there they are. And in a while we'll also see the FMC appear, the first FMC. And we'll need that to get some power on the airplane via the Sim Actions menu. Because of course we're running on battery, we're now discharging the battery. We're not using any external power source in the form of the ground power unit or the APU. So we're going to connect it. As you can see, it has come alive. In the meantime, I'm going to set the parking brakes as well. We have FS actions, and then we can go to ground connections, and here we can request ground power. It won't work if the parking brake is not set. So there we go. It says connecting. So now the ground power unit is being connected to the airplane, and shortly we'll see available here on the external power sources. You can see the lights go off. We can click on external power 1 and 2. So there we go. We now have external power. The battery is not discharging anymore, and the airplane systems are running a little bit more even. You can see that the other displays of the first officer are also online, and now we can continue with the startup procedure. Now for the startup procedure, the easiest way is just go to through the overhead panel, column by column, and from the top to the bottom. So that's what we're going to do as well. Now we start with the electrical engine control switches. Just leave them as they are, the normal, and then close the guards as well. Now the IRS system is of course the system, the inertial reference system, which the airplane uses to determine its position in space, and we need to align that. So for that we're going to open up the FMC. We're going to go out of the menu, go to FMC. We're going to ignore that. We're going to go to position initialization page, and this is where we're going to align the IRS. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to click on nav. We're going to move those switches to nav. Alright, there we go. And shortly we will see here a box becoming available to set the IRS position. And we need the GPS position for that. We need to enter the GPS position in there. You can also use the last position, which is a little bit less accurate. It's more accurate to use the GPS position. So it takes a little while for the GPS position to load, but here it is, so we can move that into the IRS position. And now the IRS is going to align itself. And if we go to the navigation display, you will see the time to align. So it's going to take at least 7 minutes from now on. You can select in the FMC to make it faster or have an immediate alignment, but I like it a realistic way, so we're just gonna do that. Alright, we're gonna close off the FMC right now, and we're gonna go ahead with the rest of the panel. Now the utility switches are on, which provide some systems and electricity for the cabin. External power is on, of course. Will APU generator, leave them as they are. Bus tie switches, you could just leave them on auto. Then we have the generator switches, we have them on so that when the engines are running, the generators of the engines will take over. We'll leave the hydraulics at off for the moment, and the demand hydraulics and then the engine hydraulics switches also on, so that the engines take over when hydraulic power from the engines is available. Now, because we have some external power and power on the airplane right now, we're going to turn on an F light so that the ground crew knows that the airplane is powered. So we'll do that in the lights section here. And these section, of course, these light knobs, you can adjust them accordingly if it's night, but now it's day, so we don't need them. Then we have the emergency lights here. We're going to arm them and we're going to close the guard. And the rest of these we can leave it as it is. We're going to move a little bit to the side for a little bit of a better view. There we go. Then we go to the fire panel. Just make sure that it's all in its standard and neutral position. And then we can take a look at the cargo fire, make sure that's also all closed, you know, all the guards are closed. The engine start switches, make sure they're, you know, in and not out. The jettison panels should be all off, of course, and then we have auto start armed. We're going to use that for the engine start, and then we can leave all of this as well. The continuous switch, we can leave that off as well. We only use that in bad weather conditions after the engine is started. Okay, then we have the fuel panel. Now we're going to take a look at fuel and payload in a second, but you can leave it as it is right now, because we're not using any fuel, because we're using the external power source, of course. Anti-ice, leave it as well. Window heat, we can already turn it on. Landing taxi lights all off. And then we have the passenger oxygen, make sure it's closed and normal. Yaw damper is on. The cabin altitude things and all that stuff, we can leave that as it is as well. We just don't touch it, leave it all on auto. Then we have the PACs, temperature and flight deck on auto. Then we have the trim arrow on, and I'll move to the right a little bit again so we can have a better view. The trim arrow on, the recirculation fans are on. Aft cargo, after starting the engines, you might want to turn it on if you're carrying any livestock or live animals on in the cargo, for example. Then we have the Gasper, which are the, you know, the little air vents above your head when you're in the passenger seat. We have them on as well. High flow and all that stuff is not necessary. Equipment cooling, we can leave that on normal, and then the packs are still off, of course. We're gonna have all the bleeds on, APU bleed on as well, and engine bleeds as well, because we're gonna need that when we're gonna start the engine. So that's the basic look of the overhead panel. Now, this is kind of the moment where you're gonna start up and plan the FMC. So if you wanna just skip this and wanna fly the airplane without programming the FMC, you can look in the description to see where the video continues. But for now, we're gonna program the FMC, and we're gonna start off by setting the weight in the airplane. Okay, that's very important. So we're gonna go back to menu. We're gonna go to FS Actions, and then to Fuel. Now, I've created a flight plan using simbrief.com, which is a great flight planner, which allows you to, quite accurately create flight plans and calculate flight plans for free. So make sure you check that out. It's a good way of getting flight plans for your flight. And we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the fuel load that we need. So if we look at our flight plan, we can see that the block fuel for this flight is 80,881 kilograms. So all you have to do is just enter that right here into the FMC. So 8,881. There we go. So that's the fuel that we're going to use. We're not very full today, so it should be alright. You can also use one of the easier buttons if you do not really care about the fuel load exactly. But yeah, this is what we're going to use. Then we're going to go to the payload section, and this KLM aircraft is a combi version. So the front of the airplane is loaded with passengers, and then in the back of the airplane there's room for cargo. So that's quite interesting. It just makes it more efficient for some airlines to both carry passengers and cargo, because they simply cannot have full passenger loads on their airplanes each and every time. So today we're going to take a look at our flight plan for our passengers, and today we're carrying 166 passengers. So we can kind of play around with this. For example, on the upper deck we have 26. Then the main passengers, of course, let's see, we had 166, so minus 26, that gives 140 passengers left. So we're gonna put the rest of the passengers right there. Then we have the cargo section. We're only carrying 20.9 tons of cargo, so 20,900 kilograms. So let's take a look. We can leave the bulk cargo empty, and then we can kind of distribute maybe the cargo in the each compartment. So you kind of have to check out you know, what kind of distribution you're going to use. So let's, for example, put 8,000 right here in the main cargo, and then which leaves 6,450 for the forward and after cargo base. So you can kind of play around with that. You know, you should check if the center of gravity is kind of within the limits of the airplane, which it is right now. So that's the amount of fuel and cargo that we're gonna be taking with us. So that's about it. Then we're gonna go through the real programming of the FMC. So I always start with the route page. So we're gonna fly from Amsterdam, and as you can see, the IRS has aligned, so we have all the systems and displays running, so that's nice. We're gonna fly from Amsterdam, put the ICAO code in here. Then we have the runway. Let's pick runway 24 for departure. We're gonna fly to John F. Kennedy Airport in New York in USA, of course. JFK. There we go. Then the flight number, we're going to be flying KLM 643, which is a real world flight number. Can put that in there. Now what I always like to do is put the flight number in here as well, if you have one of those memory things on the yoke, so you can easily remember your flight number. Then we go to departure. So here's our route for today. As you can see, it's a very nice long route, which will also take us along a net track. So today the net tracks are pretty high, so we're going to take the lowest, and we're going to fly across England, across Ireland, and then we're going to cross the Atlantic Ocean towards New York. So we're going to go back to the FMC. We start with the departure, runway 24, and the first waypoint on our flight plan is Burgi, so we can expect the Burgi 1 Sierra departure. We go back to our route, and from here on we just enter all the waypoints. It's not that hard. We're gonna start with an airway, Lima 602, after which we're gonna end up at Amgot waypoint. Then we're gonna fly that same airway, but then the upper one, Uniform Lima 602, Supur. So it's each and every time it's an airway and then a waypoint. If you're not familiar with Boeing FMCs, as you can see, it's pretty simple. If you're familiar with Boeing FMC, of course, then this will be pretty logical for you. So I'm just gonna fast forward this a little bit. Then if you have a direct entry, like after the Barso waypoint, you can just put that waypoint directly into the waypoint section. So there we go. We're gonna be flying to this VOR DME, and then we're gonna go to direct to Resno. Alright, so that's the direct waypoints for this flight plan, and then we're gonna enter the North Atlantic track. And of course the North Atlantic track is always a bit difficult, because you know, how do you enter the coordinates, for example? Now it really depends on which hemisphere you're on, how you enter the coordinates, but for the North Atlantic track it's pretty simple. You will see here a list of how to enter coordinates in the route page in the FMC, but we're going to show you in this example how to do that for the waypoints of the North Atlantic. So there are multiple ways of entering the coordinates. So for today's North Atlantic track Golf, we have we're going to start off with 56 North 20 West. So you just type 5620 and then north, so it will automatically recognize that that's 56 North 20 West. You could also do it a bit differently if you want to, like this, for example. So north 56 and then west 020. It should be the same waypoint. We can check that out. Okay, so that's another way of entering that. So yeah, whatever you want to use. So then we're going to continue with the next waypoint of a North Atlantic track, which is 57 North 30 West. So 5730 and then an N. Then we're going to end up at 57 North 40. Then our next waypoint where we will exit the North Atlantic track is 56 North 50 West. Oh, 56 North 50 West. Okay, and then we're gonna fly to the next waypoint. The rest of the flight plan is not that hard. We're gonna fly to Yanyo. Then we're gonna fly directly to the Danel waypoint. And in the end we'll end up at the Kennebunk VOR Echo November Echo. Alright. Now what I always like to do is already kind of program an arrival in the FMC. Okay, so that you can do that when whatever you want. So for example, I'm not sure about the arrivals exactly at JFK. So for example, Parts 2, ILS 13 left, for example. So you get the whole route in there already. Alright, so this is an overview of the whole route. If we go to the legs page, we can check it all. So if we go to plan mode here on the EVIS, just zoom in on the navigation display, we can step through the whole flight plan. Okay, it's very easy. So you just can make sure that the waypoints kind of look alright. If there's any waypoint which is you know, on the southern hemisphere all out of a sudden, then you know you've done something wrong. I'll just zoom out a little bit on the navigation display. There we go. So that looks all fine to me. Esno 56 North 20 West, 57 North 30 West, 57 North 40 West, 56 North 50 West. So Yanyo, Danel, and Ennebrücken. Okay. So as you can see, that's pretty easy. So I'm just checking the arrival here as well. Seems to be kind of alright, so we'll probably figure that out when we're cruising, right? So we're gonna go back to map mode, and we're gonna go to the legs page, and we're gonna activate the legs and hit execute. So our route is planned right now. Now, of course, the next thing we need to tell the FMC and the flight management system something about the weights of the airplane. Now, again, make sure you've already entered the fuel and payload in the FMC, you know, via the menu. All right. So make sure that's already done, otherwise your weights are not going to be correct. Okay. So it will automatically recognize the gross weight. You can kind of check with your flight plan if that's alright. So let's take a look at flight plan. Gross weight should be 301.2. Well, it's pretty close, right? It's 299.2, so that's alright. There's always a little bit of a difference between each and every flight planner, so since the brief is not super accurate, they're probably a little bit different. Then we have the fuel weight. It's also already automatically in there. The zero fuel weight's also automatically in there. We can enter the reserves, which is I always use the final reserve fuel plus the alternate fuel. So as you can see in the flight plan, that will give us about well, let's say 9.7 tons of fuel in the reserve. Cost index, that's also dependent on the flight plan. KLM uses usually 30, so let's put that in there. The initial cruise altitude for our flight is flight level 340. So we're gonna put that in there. Step climbs, well, maybe I will discuss that on another video, but you don't have to pre-program them. You just can start with the initial cruise altitude. That's always the best. So now we have given the airplane information about the weight and balance of the aircraft. So we can go to the thrust limit. We can select the rated thrust takeoff, which is always handy because it saves the life of the engines a little. So let's do that, 5%, climb 1 as well. Takeoff page, we're gonna fly a takeoff with flaps 10. And here we have, for example, the acceleration height, the thrust reduction, where it will go to the climb plus engine rating. You can give the FMC some information about the wind and the slope of the runway, whether the runway is dry or wet. So for example, if the runway would be wet, you can just enter wet right here. You know, for some extra accuracy, you can fill this in, but we'll skip this for now. If you've entered all that, then the FMC will come up with the V-speed. So V1 is 123, After that speed, we're going to continue the takeoff, whatever happens. Rotate is when we're going to rotate, 148. V2 is the safe climbing speed, is 164. And we're also going to put that in the MCP, 164. Okay, and then the trim setting, we can confirm that. So 23%, and it will come up with a trim setting that you set here, before departure. Okay. So that's the basic programming of the FMC already done. We've put in everything. We can go and check the VNAV page. If there enter any restrictions, you can enter the transition altitudes, which I think for Amsterdam is 3,000 feet. For example, in the US it's always 18,000. And you can check that, make sure that's all right, and you can check the progress page to make sure that you still have enough fuel, and to check what time you arrive at your destination. So that looks all right to me. Okay, so that's the basic planning of the FMC. It will take you along your route. I hope this helps. And now we can continue with the cold and dark startup procedure. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead with the startup procedure. We're going to turn the APU on because of course we're going to be pushing back shortly, so we can't use the ground power anymore. So just move that to the start position. And as you can see already, the pressure from the aft tank of the number 2 tank is going off, and that's because the APU is drawing fuel from that tank. Alright, so it's automatically turning that fuel pump on. We can take a look at the systems page. We'll be able to see the EGT rising off the APU. So that's very good. And in the meantime, we can check the overhead panel and see when the APU generators become available. And when they become available, we'll just select them so that the APU is providing the general power of the airplane. So there we go, the APU generators are available. We're gonna click them on. And we can disconnect ground power already. Before you forget, you can always disconnect ground power because we don't need it anymore. So we're gonna release that. The wheel chocks are still set. Okay. So then we go back to our overhead for our engine start. Now we're gonna go ahead with the hydraulic systems. Now it's a bit tricky on the 747. We're gonna move the fourth switch first of all to auxiliary. It's because the fourth hydraulic system is powering the gear and the brakes on the airplane, and it might be handy for ground handling operations or during pushback, for example. So when the pushback truck is connected, you can move that to auxiliary and then turn on these demand switches to auto. You should not do these first because then hydraulic quantity is kind of getting messed up because there's hydraulic fluid moving from one system to another. So we're gonna do the fourth system to auxiliary first, and then we can turn these to auto. Okay, so this one is using electrical power to power the hydraulical systems, number 2 and 3 as well, and number 1 is using the bleed air system of the APU. And of course we also want to have enough air for the APU to start the engine, so we have them at aux as well. Now then we go ahead to the fuel panel. I'll just move to the side a little bit again. We are going to turn on the fuel pumps. Oh, there we go. First of all, make sure you just turn on all the general fuel pumps. Don't forget to turn on this one as well, because that's the one that was drawing fuel for the APU, which turned itself already on, but you still have to turn it on manually as well. Okay, now as you can see, we get a pressure warning from the center tank, and that's because we're simply not using fuel from the tank. So it's very wise to check how you configure the fuel system. Now, as you can see, the center is empty, so we're not going to be using that anyways. Okay, so we're going to turn them off. They turn white. Now, and there's a general rule of thumb regarding the configuration of the crossfeed valves. So the crossfeed valves make sure that fuel can run from one system to the other. Now, if there's more fuel in the center tanks, so tank 2 and 3, than the outer tanks, okay, we're going to turn on the crossfeed valve. So they are on right now. Okay. However, when they are equal to their outer tanks, so when the tank 2 and 3 are equal to 1 and 4, we're gonna turn off the crossfeed valve so that all the tanks are supplying their own engine. Okay. Now if there's more fuel in the outer tanks, so 1 and 4, than in the center tanks, you would close the crossfeed valve. Now you just have to monitor throughout the flight how the fuel is distributed among the fuel system, and you can change accordingly. For example, these override pumps, you can also use them if necessary. So they will supply some extra power and pressure to the center tanks right here. Okay, and these override pumps are based on system logic, so if it's not necessary to use, the system will not use them automatically, but they're green now, so they're actually being used. Okay, and I really suggest reading the tutorial on how to configure the fuel system. Okay, so the fuel pumps are running. Then the engine anti-ice and all that stuff, we just leave it as it is. We're not going to be needing that anyways. We have already come across this. Then the packs, you could have also already turned them on when the APU was running, so that the cabin is a bit warm. Now depending on the conditions, like the temperature outside and how well the packs are still working, you know, if you're having a very old airplane, for example, you're gonna either need to turn off 2 or 3 packs. Now it's recommended for dual engine start, which we're gonna do in a moment, to turn off all the 3 packs. Okay, so if you have them in this position right here, so to the normal position, we have air running through the cabin and through the cockpit, as you can hear, but we're gonna start 2 engines at the same time, so let's turn them off, all of them. And the isolation valves are open as well, the APU bleeds open and the engine bleeds are open. And we're gonna turn on the beacon lights, both of them, so that the ground crew knows that we're going to start our engines. And the basic idea of turning the packs off is of course that all the air goes to the engines for the engine start, instead of all the air going to the cabin and the cockpit. Okay, so G is X, ground services X is doing the pushback for me, so I'm not using the default pushback feature of PMDG. So when I remove the wheel chocks, it's gonna start the pushback on all that stuff. So before we do that, I'm just gonna shortly explain what I'm gonna do. As we're gonna start our engines, we're gonna pull these switches, the start switches, and we're gonna turn on the fuel control valves to run. Okay, and then we're gonna monitor the engine displays, make sure everything is alright, and then the engine will start automatically. Now, because we're using the auto start system, the system will monitor itself, so that you know, if something happens, it will just shut down automatically. If there's no auto start on your airline's 747, then you have to manually adjust all that and take account of all those factors. But the auto start feature is available on this KLM airplane. It's easy. Okay, so I'm gonna remove the wheel chocks. Hold on 1 second, I forgot to close the door. Of course, also make sure that the doors are closed. It opens one of them automatically. So there we go. Doors are closed. Parking brake set. And it's locking the gear right now. So yeah, don't forget to close the doors whenever necessary, or the cargo bays for that matter. Okay, there we go. We're gonna release the parking brake. And in the meantime, we can enjoy some of the beautiful views here at Schiphol. Okay, so we're gonna start the engine start procedure. We're gonna pull number 4 and 3. So we're gonna do on dual engine start. All packs are off, so we have enough bleed air. And there we go. 3 and 4 are pulled, and we're gonna turn on the fuel control switches. And in the meantime, we're gonna monitor the engine systems carefully. There we go, and 2 is rising. And I'm sorry, the cockpit is shaking quite a bit. So we're at 40% N2, and as you can see, N1 is also spinning up. There we go. And as you can see, the switches will cut out. And number 3 and 4 have successfully started, and as you can see, the generators have taken over, the APU generator is not necessary anymore, and the engine bleeds are supplying the pressure system as well. So I'll just wait for the pushback to be finished so we can demonstrate number 1 and 2 engine without too much shaking. Now we can do the same procedure for 1 and 2. So we're gonna pull 2 and 1. There we go. And we're gonna put the full fuel control switches to run. And again for number 1 and 2 we're gonna monitor the systems, make sure that everything is alright. Well, that seems to be alright, so we can monitor all the values, like the vibration, the oil pressure, and the oil temperature, and as long as that's within safe values, and as long as everything is white right here, then the values are okay. So as you can see, engine 1 and 2 are starting up now. Go back to the overhead panel, you can see the switches go back into their original position and turn off. Okay, so that was a smooth engine start procedure. Pushback truck is moving back, as you can see. And now we just need to finalize some of the systems on the airplane. Okay, so we don't need the APU anymore, so we can turn that off. We'll make sure that the generators have successfully taken over the job of the electrical power. The fourth hydraulic demand switched to auto, and as you can see, also the engines are now supplying the hydraulic system, so that's good. Again, make sure the fuel panel is configured accordingly. We have the engine anti-ice if necessary, while the temperature is 15 degrees centigrade, so that's not necessary. Then we'll move over a little bit to the right again to the pack system. Of course, we want to turn the packs on, and we can turn the APU bleed off since we have do not have the APU running anymore. So now the engines are supplying air to the cabin and to the cockpit. And guys, that's about it. That's how you start up the Boeing 747 and how you do some basic programming on the FMC. Now of course I mainly focus on the overhead panel. Of course you can do a lot more things right here. For example, on an oxygen test right here, and you can check all the sources. You can configure the radio panel, all of that. Let's turn the seat belts on as well, for example. Of course that's kind of necessary, right? And of course the MCP can configure that based on your departure route. So but at least this gives you an idea of how to start up the basic systems, or the entire system of the 747, and the rest you can configure accordingly. Okay, so now you're ready to start your flight to New York JFK. So guys, thanks for watching this video here on the Aviation Pro channel. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope it helped a little bit with starting up the 747. Of course, make sure to check out my PMDG 747 version 3 review. It would be very much appreciated if you check that out. I'm giving you a full review of the entire airplane, and yeah, I think it's a really magnificent airplane to fly. So there we go. That's how you start up the PMDG 747. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you leave a comment below, and if you like this video, make sure you like and share and subscribe. It's really much appreciated. Also make sure you check out my Patreon page over at patreon.com/aviationpro. Your support and your donations are very much appreciated and are really welcome. That allows me to make more of these videos and to educate you more about flight simulation and aviation. So guys, thanks for watching this video, and I will see you on the next one.